Hi guys, here's a little video to help you with 5.2, graphing linear equations. And the big thing to do with 5.2 is to read the directions. There's multiple ways to graph these lines, but if you graph this correct line, but you don't do it the way they told you to do it, you will get the problem wrong. So the first step for all of these is to read what they want. This one wants the x-intercept and the y-intercept. And so what I'm going to do for most of these problems is start with what I call a T-chart. And I'll show you what that looks like. So the x and y-intercept, excuse me, the y-intercept is going to be where it crosses the y-axis. So your x-coordinate will be 0. And the x-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, so your y-coordinate will be 0. So for these, I just go ahead and fill in those two zeros, excuse me, so that I know I'm just plugging in 0 for x, solving for y, plugging in 0 for y, and solving for x. So let me go ahead and go to the screen that I can write on, 7x minus 8y. So let's go here. I'm going to make my T-chart. My x's are here, my y's are here. For the x-intercept, it's where y equals 0. And the y-intercept is where x equals 0. So there's how I fill in my T-chart. So if I plug in y equals 0, I'm going to have 7 times 0 minus 8y equals 56. Well, 7 times 0 is 0, so I can sort of drop that and know that I have negative 8 times y equals 56. Divide both sides by negative 8. So y equals negative 7. So when x is 0, my y is negative 7. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to plug in y equals 0. So I'll have 7x minus 8 times 0 equals 56. Well, 8 times 0 is 0, so that just goes away. So I have 7x, excuse me, equals 56. Divide both sides by 7. X is 8. So these are going to be the 2 points I'm going to enter because it specifically asked for the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Okay, so let me go back there. It's 8 and negative 7. All right, so the x-intercept is 8. I have to make sure I put them in the right place. And the y-intercept is negative 7. So let's see if I did that right. I did. Okay, good. So you have to read these very carefully, okay? This one says by plotting any two ordered pairs, okay? So for this one, I'm going to set up my T-chart again, but I'm going to pick any numbers I want for x. Any numbers, literally, any numbers, anything. There are some that are going to be easier to work with than others, and we'll talk about that as we go through this. Obviously, you need to pick x's between positive 10 and negative 10. Okay, because they won't fit on the chart if they're not. So that's one starting point. The other starting point is you want to pick numbers that are easy to do the math with. You know, pick 0, pick 1, pick negative 1. And when we get to a problem with fractions, I'll show you how a way to strategically pick x's that are going to be easier to work with. So let me go to my screen that I can write on. Here's my T-chart. I always start by picking x equals 0 because it's super easy. That means that negative 6 times 0 is going to go away. And I'm just going to have 9y equals 0. Divide both sides by 9. Y is 0. So there's 1 point. All right, it said any point. So I'm going to pick x equals 1 because it's certainly easy to do math with 1. So negative 6 times 1 plus 9y equals 0. So negative 6 plus 9y equals 0. Add 6 to both sides. 9y equals 6. Divide both sides by 9. So y is 6/9, which reduces to 2/3. Some people don't like that. Okay, and it may be hard to find 2/3 on my graph. So I'm actually going to go again. And this time I'm going to pick for x, I'm going to pick the coefficient of y. See if that helps me get a better number. So I'm going to pick 9 for x, okay? So I'm going to have negative 6 times 9 plus 9y equals 0. So negative 54 plus 9y equals 0. Add 54 to both sides. 9y is 54. Divide by 9, y is 6. So that gave me a point that was easier to graph. So I'm going to graph these 2 points, 0, 0, and 9, 6. 0, 0, and 9 to the right, 9, up 6. And let's check that. Very good. Okay, so you see what I did there? I picked x equals 0, and then I just picked x equals 1 because it's any other point. But it gave me a fraction that was hard to find on the graph, hard to graph. So for my second x that I picked the coefficient of y. And that will generally give you an easy x plot. Every now and then you'll get an x or a y that is off the charts, you know, bigger than 10 or smaller than negative 10, and you'll have to pick again. So some of it is trial and error as far as finding an easy point to plot. But once you start doing these for yourself, you'll learn always pick 0 for x, and then for your second x, there's some strategy to what you want to pick to solve for y. So let's look at the next one. 10x plus 2y, so I need to ask myself, do they want those intercepts or do they want any point? All right, find the x and y intercept. Okay, so I'm going to go down and put my zeros. My y-intercept is where y equals 0. Sorry, x equals 0. My x-intercept is where y equals 0. And so those are the points I'm going to plug in for my t-chart here. Now let me draw on here. There we go. My t-chart, plug in my zeros. So plug in x equals 0, and the 10x sort of disappears, and I'm left with 2y equals 10. So y is 5. If I plug in y equals 0, this guy disappears, so I have 10x equals 10. So x is 1. So 0, 5, and 1, 0. 0, 5, and 1, 0. So hopefully you're getting the idea. I'm going to try to find one that maybe has fractions. So this one is any two ordered pairs. Okay, so let's plug in 0 and plug in 1 for my x's. Any two ordered pairs. If I plug in 0, negative 3 times 0, well, that's 0. I entered the letter O instead of 0. And if I plug in 1, negative 3 times 1, negative 3. Super easy. All right. Same thing here. I'm going to plug in two different x's, 0 and 1. Same thing here. This time it wants any two ordered pairs. So I'm going to plug in x equals 0. And then maybe I'll plug in x equals 7 or negative 7 and solve for y. And they should be 2 points on the graph. I'm going to try to find one with fractions because everybody hates that. Okay. So the strategy with this guy is that you still want to do your t-chart and you want to plug in x equals 0 because that's super easy. That just goes away. So y is 2. Okay. Now for your second x that you want to plug in, you want to plug in the denominator of the fraction, okay, for x. So you're going to have y equals 3/5 times 5 plus 2. Well, this is 5 over 1. So 3 times 5 is 15, divided by 5 is 3. So in other words, your 5s here will just cancel out. You'll just get 3 plus 2 is 5. So my 2 points are going to be 0, 2 and 5, 5. And we're good there. So use your knowledge of x and y intercepts to choose the correct graph. So what I want to do here is just go ahead and create my little t-chart and figure out what my x and y intercepts are. So if I plug in 0 for x, that guy goes away, and I have 2y equals 6, so y is 3. If I plug in 0 for y, that guy goes away, and I have 6x equals 6, so x is 1. So I want to look for the graph that goes through 0, 3, well, that's this one or this one, right? And the one that goes through 1, 0. So that has to be this one. So it's going to be B. B. All right, this one says x and y intercepts. So again, I'm going to plug in, for the y-intercept, I'm going to plug in x equals 0 and y equals 0 here, substitute them in to solve for the other variables. Let's skip it, see if there's anything new. All right, this one is the word problem, and the sort of cheat here that I will tell you is that you really don't have to read the words if they give you the equation. Just focus on the equation and see that it says that your base fee is $8 per person plus 75 cents for every mile. So this is your $8 per person plus 75 cents times the number of miles we're going to go. Okay. So it tells you right here y is the fare and x is the distance of the ride in miles. So first it says find any 2 points, right? Finding 2 points. So let's do that. 0.75x plus 8. X equals 0. That means y is going to be 8, right? Because the 0.75 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 8 is 8. Let's just plug in 1 for x. So 0.75 times 1 is 0.75 plus 8 is 8.75. So I'm going to graph 0, 8, and 1, 8.75. So 0, 8 is here, and it tells you where your point is. That's helpful. The next one that we found was 1, 8.75. So go over 1, and now I'm going to go up to 8, and then it's going to be like 3/4 of the way to 0.75. So I'm just going to actually put it somewhere and see how it tells me that's 8.25. I'm going to move it until I have, there's 8.5, 8.75. Okay, so you can drag it around and read what they've got. I also could have gone ahead and plugged in 5 or something so that I would get a point further away from that first point. It might be easier to find, but that should do it for us. And step 2 of that problem is, there's the line we just graphed. Use the graph to estimate to the nearest quarter of a dollar to the nearest 25 cents the cost of a cab ride for one person that is 5 miles. Well, x is the distance in ride in miles. So I'm going to go along my x-axis until I hit 5, and then my y, if I follow that up, is going to tell me the cost of the ride. So that looks to be really close to, but not on that little 12, right? So here's 10, 11, 12. So I'm going to guess 11.75, $11.75. Good. All right, and then this is back to the same old thing, x and y intercepts. So I'm going to put in my zeros. X is 0 here. And if x is 0, that goes away. So I'm left with negative 2y equals 10. So divide by negative 2, and y is negative 5. Now, if I'm plugging in y equals 0, let me actually show you that one. Y equals 0, so I'll have negative 5/3 x equals 10, right? Because if y is 0, that just goes away. So to undo your multiplication by negative 5/3, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is negative 3/5 on both sides. Because, right, that'll give you negative 15 over, sorry, positive 15 over positive 15, which is 1 times x is x. So here I'm just going to do my, my simple multiplication, and you can either multiply and then divide, you can use your calculator, you can cancel first. Either way, you should get negative 6. So x is negative 6